8 days before his resurrection, our Lord came to Bethany and stared down the rock tomb in which his friend Lazarus had already been entombed for 4 days. And after having prayed, Jesus cried out into that cave of death, "Lazarus, come forth!" And he did. But it didn't have to be that way. Lazarus didn't have to rise from the dead. He could have said, "I've been dead for 4 days now. I'm wrapped up like a mummy, and I stink. I'm getting kind of used to being dead. I don't know that I want to do this." Lazarus could have said no to Jesus. We can do that. We do it every time we sin. Lazarus could have chosen against life. We can do that. We do that every time we sin. But he didn't. Somehow, wrapped up in his mummy clothes, he did get up, and he did come out, and he did return to life by Jesus Christ's divine power. But Lazarus had to make that first move. Wrapped up as he was, he had to make the first move once he heard the life-giving words of our Lord. It's the same thing in the gospel this morning. That man has been lying there, paralyzed, for 38 years, for as long as Israel wandered in the wilderness. For 38 years, he's been waiting for the miracle that could never possibly happen. For 38 years, he's been believing in magic and calling it religion. And the only reason he was cured was because when Jesus said, "Stand up, pick up your mat, and walk," somehow he found the faith and found the hope and found the strength to move first one foot and then the other foot and then slowly raise himself to a stature he hadn't had for 38 years. Jesus has the power, but that man had to hear and believe and obey and do something. Every Sunday of Pascha points out to us one or more of the obstacles that can stand in the way of you and me actually claiming and living and enjoying the new life Jesus Christ, risen from the dead, offers us. And today the message is very simple. Our Lord Jesus Christ invites us out of sin, out of death. But we've got to take the next step. What do we have to step away from? Picture the scene we heard this morning in the Acts of the Apostles. A nice old church lady died, and a bunch of other nice old church ladies call St. Peter to come and do something. And he does. But when he gets there, what does he find? He finds them still acting like there is no resurrection. He finds them all fluttering around in all kinds of nervous energy and all kinds of hopeless grief. They're doing exactly what St. Paul tells us not to do in the epistle we read at every funeral. We would not have you grieve like those without hope, Paul says. But that's what they're doing. They're still stuck in their old habits of dealing with death. Even though they're church ladies, they believe Christ is risen. And so Peter has to throw them out in order to bring resurrection to Tabitha. On Friday, as we read our way through the Acts of the Apostles every day during the 40 days of Pascha, we heard the story at liturgy of St. Paul's conversion. What did Paul have to be called out of something seemingly good. Paul had to be called out of his very, very devout, strict observance of all of the laws God gave to Moses. In one of his epistles, Paul as much as calls himself, I'm just about the best Jew there ever was. And he believed it. And he may well have been. But that was all in the way of him coming to new life in Jesus Christ. And he had to be shocked, knocked down, blinded, and restored to sight before he could take that step. And oh, did he take that step? What might the Lord be calling us out of this year as he calls us into a fuller enjoyment of his new life? It may be a grudge we simply haven't wanted to let go of yet. It may be a bitter memory that continues to haunt us. It may be a sin that we believe can't be forgiven. It may be a habit that we just need to break. Maybe something negative. But it may simply be a positive step. The Lord may simply be calling us out of timidity, small-mindedness, an addiction to comfort and convenience. He may simply be inviting us to take a step forward in virtue, to take a step forward in the active practice of charity, to take a step forward in the active, vocal, exemplary witness to what we believe. He may be calling us to turn off the noise and step away from the endless cycle of bad news that we binge on until it drowns out the good news. You know, there's a reason why the church commands that every one of us make a sacramental confession sometime during the Lenten and Paschal season. And it's precisely so that we can step out of whatever might be holding us back and step into a fuller enjoyment of Christ's new life. And that's why the period for that Easter duty extends from the first Sunday of Lent until Pentecost. Maybe that's another way to look at confession. Stepping away from the things that hold us back, stepping away from the residual mummy clothes of sin and death into the light of Christ's resurrection. For Christ is risen, but it's up to us to take the step to follow him into the newness of life.